Okay, so if you've ever looked for a house online, chances are you've ended up on a site like Zillow, right? Well, behind that slick search bar, there's actually a hidden conflict brewing. It's a kind of war between the agents who sell the homes and the very websites we use to find them. So today, let's dive into these so-called portal wars.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Here's the central mystery. It turns out most agents, they don't actually buy customer leads from these big portals. So you have to ask, if it's not their main source of business, why are they so obsessed with this fight for control? It kind of sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it?
And just to be super clear, we're not talking about a small handful of agents here. No, the data shows that for the overwhelming majority of real estate pros, buying leads from a portal just isn't a core part of how they do business. And yet, they're glued to every single twist and turn of this conflict. It's fascinating.
So, what's really going on? To get to the bottom of this puzzle, we're going to look at some clues from a big survey of real estate professionals done by Inman Intel. They basically went out and asked agents what they really think about all this and, what they wish would happen instead. And trust me, what they found is pretty revealing.
All right, first things first. To understand where agents want to go, we've got to get a handle on where they are right now. And that brings us to the current state of play, what we can call the Zillow status quo.
And the very first clue, probably the biggest one from the survey, is this. Agents are not happy. Not at all. There is just this huge, widespread dissatisfaction with the whole system. A system where one giant, publicly traded company has so much power over how we all see homes listed online.
And, wow, this chart really puts it into perspective. Just look at this. When they were asked about their ideal endgame, a whopping 90% of agents said they wanted any other scenario, anything, but the current one. That leaves this tiny little 10% slice who are okay with sticking to the Zillow-centric status quo. That's a huge divide.
Okay, so if 90% of them want something different, what is it? If they could just tear the whole thing down and start from scratch, what would they build? Well, that's the next part of our investigation. Let's find out what the agent's preferred endgame really is.
This really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If you gave agents a magic wand and told them, okay, build your perfect system for listing homes online, what would they actually come up with?
And here it is, the number one answer. The big idea that the largest group of agents is really hoping for is an industry-controlled platform. That's the vision that gets them fired up. But okay, what does that actually mean?
Well, to put it simply, it's a website for listing homes that's run by the real estate industry for the real estate industry. So think about a platform that's governed by agents and their organizations, not by some giant tech company that has to answer to shareholders on Wall Street.
This whole vision really boils down to three core principles. First, it would be run by people who are actually in the industry. Second, it would have to be independent, right? Not secretly controlled by one of the huge brokerage firms. And maybe most importantly, its main goal would be to serve agents and their clients, not just to make as much money as possible selling leads.
Now you might be thinking, an industry-run portal? That sounds pretty straightforward, and a ton of agents seem to agree. So if it's such a popular idea, why doesn't it already exist? Well, this is where we get to the big twist in the story. It turns out making it happen is an incredibly uphill battle.
And believe me, this isn't a new idea. The people who put this survey together point out that this has been the dream for industry insiders for years. It's always been this really enticing idea, but actually pulling it off in the real world, that's been a whole other story.
And this slide just lays out that core conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got the agent's vision for industry control, but that runs smack into the reality of Zillow's massive brand power. I mean, we all know the name, right? Then you have their dream of agent-friendly rules, but that has to deal with tons of regulatory scrutiny. And finally, their hope for everyone working together, well, that's challenged by the fierce competition that's always existed between different brokerages.
So what we've got here is basically a standoff. In one corner, you have the vast majority of agents who are unhappy and have a pretty clear vision for something different. And in the other corner, you have the massive, deeply entrenched power of the current market leader. It leaves you wondering, so what happens next?
Yeah, that's the question on everyone's mind in the industry right now. What's the next move in this high-stakes chess match for control of real estate's digital front door?
And that really brings us to the edge of the next chapter, because the future here is totally unwritten. The survey data actually leaves us with even more questions, like which of the current alternative platforms do agents actually trust? What on earth would happen if a tech giant like Google or even ChatGPT decided to jump into this fight? And hey, do the big brokerage leaders even agree with the agents working for them? The portal war is far, far from over. And you know, the outcome could literally change how all of us find our next home.